Rocking Chair Session. With Elisa Di Battista and Maria Teresa Barber. Hello everyone,
and welcome to RCS Rocking Chair Sessions Volume 33 with artist Alexander Zastera.
Yes.
Welcome,
Hi.
Alexander. Welcome, Alexander.
Thank
so
you
good to
for
have you
having
today. Pre-Basel, relaxed Sunday. I don't know. Pre-feel it into the week. Pre-excitement.
Calm before the storm.
Calm before the storm. Calm before the storm.
Which let's delve into that. Yeah. We know that you have a show up at Ant Gallery. If you could talk to us about it. Let's just jump in. You said calm before the storm. Can you talk to us about the show you have up right now?
So at Ant Gallery, I have a show called Force Majeure, and basically the show started with a dream a year ago of a hurricane hitting Miami. And yeah, it was one of those things that just like, it was this dream that I was having over and over and over. And you know, as an artist, when you have a vision, it doesn't, like, it has to exist. It just has to exist. So I started working on the project a year ago and investigating materials, which led me to denim, and I made a giant denim hurricane out of donated jeans, bleached, washed. I left them out, let the storm take the jeans and denim, so they're hurricane weathered, and recorded some things when Irma hit, and now it's all on a giant cyclone above your head in a installation piece. So, and then there's some other like smaller works that are kind of like snapshots of the storm, but that's kind of like the main thesis idea that I had to make.
A large sculptural piece. And prior to, because I recall your painting, some of the painting is actually the one we're using for the preview from your previous series. Are you used to working sculpturally, or are you like mixed media? You dabble a little bit in everything. If you could talk to us about that.
I think recently, so with the project, it's like, I was like sitting there, I'm like, okay, is this a painting? Is it a sculpture? Is it like, what is it? And I mean, I've always considered myself a painter in many regards. Like the series that I was kind of doing this before were these like dark urban nightscapes of South Florida.
Beautiful.
Kind of like looking at the development that's happening here, because the city is just like, it's constantly changing, especially like the last 10 years. It's just been one thing after the other. So I was trying to capture these places that were being demolished and luxury housing was going up in turn. So I don't know really how to answer the question in that, is it a painting, is it a sculpture? Before that, I had done some like sculpture works that were also kind of playing in that. Like I made this gigantic snake coiling sculpture that was made out of all of hand, like that was all watercolor paper that I had painted and cut and then turned into this sculpture. So I think now kind of finding my identity as an artist has been just looking at my tool set and starting to look at it more holistically rather than like, okay, these are just going to be this, these are just going to be this, like playing with sound, playing with sculpture, playing with the painting, like, you know, how can those things fuse together?
Yeah, who says it has to be one or the other? It could do both.
Yeah.
Simultaneously alongside each other, parallel almost.
Yeah, I think it's, I think a lot of artists sometimes get caught in, like, this is my style, so I have to maintain that. And for me, it's definitely more about, like, what is the best media to produce this idea? And I will still show through in some way. I feel like all my work's kind of the tie-in, as I've been telling people that, you know, I address kind of like the socio-political, environmental, but through Florida flair. It's kind of the tie-in, I feel like.
Let's talk about that Florida flair. You were born in Jacksonville. Could you tell us about your youth there?
So I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida.
I've never been to Jacksonville. I don't think so. Have you been?
I've been to Jackson. Well, you drive it to go up the East Coast, and I have. So I have. You haven't? You should.
Yeah, it's a really interesting city, and it's also very different. Like, especially coming to Miami and then kind of going back and visiting. Like recently, I went back, and it's just it's definitely like a slower pace. And one of the things that I do really also appreciate is like and the environmental kind of aspects of Florida, where you have like this lush subtropical down here, but then up it's more like the hardy oaks and the pines.
And the moss, the Spanish moss just dripping from the trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, I grew up next to like a wetland area, so like that was behind my house, so it was like me going into the woods and like building forts, and like when it would rain, like it would fill. And I remember this one time I was like wading through the water like up to my belly button, and like I got out and like my dad like yelled at me, and like not understanding that like there's water moccasins that were in our yard, that we'd have like deer, like, you know, you pull up in the middle of the night and there's deer like grazing in the yard. And so there's always been that connection to nature and the environment that I feel like I've really carried on through my work, and also just trying through my own like personal practice in both artwork, but then also like how am I living as a human, and how is that infecting my space. And I think that is a lot of what my work deals with, is this sort of like, how can we talk about the spaces that we're occupying, and how are we you know, changing and evolving those spaces.
And who taught you to build these forts, or was it like more just intuitive of you being out there with the twigs? Like, did you have one parent that leaned towards the arts or supported you in your creative efforts?
Both parents, very supportive, though in terms of the fort, it was always like my dad would have to go like take them down, like, you know, it was because at the end of the day, like, you have like all these 8-year-olds running around the forest like building a fort. It's not going to be engineeringly like sound, like, so he had to make sure that like we're not like gonna harm ourselves.
Fort that you built.
Yeah, so you know, those are all things in retrospect, which in time it was like kind of like, oh, why can't you let us keep this up, sort of thing. But I mean, I think that's like the childhood fantasy of like, you know, you've made this space and you're like, oh, how cool, like, you know. But in terms of support, like the parents have always been supportive. I mean, I still remember like, I remember the time I like almost like claim artisthood in the way, or I guess found artisthood, was like 5 years old, Christmas. I unwrapped my present and it was a box of 64 crayons, the pack with the sharpener on the back.
Ooh, nice.
Which is like, that was like, if you walked into school the next day, it was like,
you were the cool kid.
Yeah. So, and I still remember like the feeling of like, you know, holding this material and just being so elated over a pack of crayons.
No, I still get elated over a pack of crayons.
Yeah.
The smell is, I mean, so refreshing. Continue. It's like a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah, I mean, but that kind of, so it's always been like, they've always supported it, and they've always, like, they just know that like, not that there isn't another way, but like that's just who I am, and like I'm going to pursue this, and like as long as I'm, you know, being successful, and by being successful I think that means like really just truly being yourself, and at the end of the day trying to make some money, you know, and being happy about it. So that's kind of where they've taken it. So they've been very supportive. They've always been to all my shows.
Excellent. And did either of them lean towards the arts, like were like sculptor or a drawer or ceramicist or?
Accountant and systems analyst. So
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like the...
I mean, well, those are, what is it called, responsible jobs, but did they secretly, like, you know, doodle or...
Not really.
No.
I mean, my dad's an engineer, but so I mean, he can draw a bit, and I mean, I've like have like an aunt who like likes to paint on her off time, and but not really.
They were lacking that in their life, so it was like the universe
You had
said,
to fill the creative part of the family.
Yeah.
You were mentioning we in the woods before. Do you have siblings, or was it like a pack you ran with, like of kids?
I have a brother. He is studying to be a veterinarian in Missouri right now. So he is kind of like the more scientific analytic side, which I mean, I think in my work is very scientific in the things that I'm studying and researching in terms of the environment, but it definitely is not in the lab, like learning all the biochemistry and stuff. Like those things interest me, but not enough to seek it out. Yeah.
And your brother is just pure science. He has no like desire to pursue anything.
Well, I mean, veterinary is pursuing something, but
I mean, artistic wise.
Well, artistic wise,
It's you. Good.
It's me. I mean, we both were in band together, so I mean, he's also like,
Ooh,
yes.
you mentioned bands. We have to pop that open.
Yeah.
And I want to mention also that for your closing or pre-closing, you also organized a big performance event at Ant Gallery, right? That's like a big part of your practice, like sound performance and.
Yeah. So. My friend Juan Campuzano, he has this project Selective Abstractions, and so he has been trying to kind of bring together the noise underground sets of Miami and do these shows. So for the closing, I asked him to curate this sound show with Gavin Perry Academic, Rick Molasses, and
It'll come to you.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me. But yeah, and then I mean Alexander performing, and then also like my friend Frank Rojas was in there, and it was really wonderful. It was one of those things that, like I was saying earlier, about kind of working with this more interdisciplinary measure. So I was in band for 8 years.
With your brother?
With my brother.
What'd you play?
Flute.
Excellent.
So
like the straight one or the cross
the one off to the side, classically trained flautist. So
did you march in a band too?
Yes.
You did march in a band. Were you the tallest person in the band?
Yes, I think there was people that were about as tall as me. Because I will say, like, it's one thing in Miami, like. I stick out like a sore thumb when it comes to, well, I mean, there's many reasons.
So many short people in Miami. No offense, Miamians, but being
you
tall
are very
general,
tall
but
here,
like in Jacksonville, like it's not as odd.
Yeah, more people are tall up north. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is one of those things that I was in the marching band. I played flute. I did trumpet one year.
Neat.
My director told me to go back to flute.
You're no trumpet guy.
Yeah, understandable, but
flute's for you.
Yeah, so then it's nice because then so like kind of going in my musical journey, I guess, was like coming into Miami. I would hang out with a lot of musicians, Jay Thomas, Jojo Sunshine, Oscar Quesada, as part of Blue Jay, and we would always hang out on the bay on 26th Street in Edgewater, and that's where they lived, in this green building. And I started to, like, I guess flute was like the dirty secret in college that I kind of hid away. I didn't really play, like it wasn't something that I brought out, and then kind of being with them and being like, wow, this is something that I still know how to play and I love, and how can I do that? And so then with hanging out with Juan, he got me into the kind of more like beat production and working with musical programs and making stuff on the computer. So with the performance, I mixed in, so it was flute, hurricane recordings, and produced beats that I had all kind of put together and into Alexander's performance.
And for the installation as well, or is the installation only the hurricane recordings?
The installation is with the installation it was just the hurricane recording. So my whole Irma experience, which was a very crazy one.
We want to hear it. We want to hear everything about it.
Yeah, it was. But for the entire experience, what I did was I ended up recording it, because it was like one of those things that, like, I mean, when you have this vision of this hurricane hitting Miami, and then it's almost like a prophetic gesture of all the things that you've been working on, and it comes to a head, and like, like even with like the show opening and stuff, like the show that my show coincided with at the gallery, like got pushed back because of the hurricane. So we had already planned to have this date of this installation installed and everything, and it just, kind of.
Yeah,
you couldn't even install because of the hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, it was like one of those things that, and I mean, and utilizing the storm also as the process. So it's like making sure that the denim is out. Like, what I found really interesting about the storm is, I mean, there's the research aspect of what I was working on already with this hurricane, but then actually like having to live through it, and like, because there's very distinct, like there's like pre-storm, during the storm, post-storm. So really dealing with those things and kind of understanding like what kind of impacts those have, which kind of also I feel like goes into the piece. So like the fact that it's donated denim also kind of alludes to like what's the first thing after a hurricane. Like people are donating clothes, people are giving to support, or even kind of like talking about like bodies lost or lives lost, or like what's the last thing that you have when your whole house has like been destroyed. It's like, okay, you have just the clothes on your back. So definitely thinking about those sorts of things, but it just kind of really tied together a lot of things for me. But with the sound, I recorded the whole thing and then put it into, I was kind of like, I pretended to be a reporter. I'm like, this is Alexander Zastera reporting to you from North Miami. And so it's like all these like fun little just recordings that kind of got smashed together. And yeah.
Which isn't quite out there because there were a lot, I think, for those that don't know, post-Irma, during Irma, there were a lot of Floridians who, like, we get hit by so many storms. They were just trying to make light of it and trying to somehow survive through it. So you have, like, these YouTube videos of people being outside when they should be inside or recording things. So the fact that you were a reporter yourself, I mean, I think it just goes to show the time and age we live in, that we try to, I feel like, not make light of it entirely, but just do something to keep sane, is what I'm saying.
I think it's also, like, I have to put on my psychology hat here.
Go ahead.
I think it's also a way, it's a coping strategy.
Totally.
Because if you are a reporter, you take yourself out a little bit, and you're kind of like, in a way, in control, because you are reporting on the storm, and the storm is not just doing whatever it wants with you, because you're
Which
like,
it totally
so
is.
it puts you in in this like, kind of removed position a little bit. I feel like that happens too. For me, it was like the first major storm that I ever experienced in my whole life.
Oh, yeah.
Especially being from Austria. Like, we do have avalanches, people die. We have earth mudslides, people die, houses get destroyed. And but nothing like a hurricane. Like, and I was telling my friends in Austria what I just went through. I mean, they were just like, oh my God, we can't imagine living in a place.
Well, it's so interesting because like, first I want to say that I think that a reporter is also like, I think a aspect of a position of comfort for others, because like if you think about like Brian Norcross, I was reading his whole book during the storm and everything, my Hurricane Andrew story, it was like, people looked to him for comfort, and that was also something that I tried to provide for my friends and stuff. Like, I don't want to be like, in my vision, I saw that it doesn't hit the city directly. It kind of just comes close, and just. But it also,
that was in your vision?
Yeah, but I mean, it was also.
Oh my God, you're like a prophet.
Which I want to delve into too. I'm like, what other dreams do you have that have come into fruition? But we'll finish it.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of those things that, offering a level of comfort, but being like, you need to have a level head during the storm and just know that, because I think part of the storm is also like, it's the frenzy of the storm. Like, the storm wasn't as bad as like everyone, like the energy, like you felt it in the city, like right before. It was just like this weird, everyone on edge, like everyone was going and buying stuff. Like, but then there was like this weird calm moment right before. It was just like, you're like looking around, brace yourselves. And, it was also one of those things that I think Miami needed this. I don't know if you felt it, but there's been definitely like a shakeup, I feel like, in the city since the storm.
Well, prior to Irma hitting, I feel like we had a big break of not having hurricanes, and so when people don't have that on a daily, they forget, so they are more disconnected, they're not as aware, and so we do have a lot of people that moved here from other cities. I won't shout anybody out, but they're like, ooh, Miami, tropical paradise, and it's like, yeah, sometimes there's a certain price we pay for living in paradise, and so that shook a lot of people, but we were very lucky we weren't struck. I mean, you never really know what's going to happen with the storm, so yeah.
And was it? No, it was not your first major hurricane, obviously.
You were in Jacksonville, didn't you have
Jacksonville, we had, but it was very different in the experiences, because when I experienced them in Jacksonville, I was a much younger child. Like, I still remember I was in 7th grade, Mrs. Ricano's class, shout out to her. I remember it so distinctly because, like, I had a project due. And it just like, we found out like the next day, and then it was I believe 2006, where it was like, there was like the 4 hurricanes that just one after the other. So then it was like, it was really funny because we it just got postponed. So every day I'd wait, and I was like, okay, don't have to do it today. Like, and but it was one of those things. Like with this storm, like the economic impacts of going and buying all that food and stuff and not having like money necessarily saved up for that. The like having to do all the physical labor in order to physically set up the house. Like my housemate had like a 20 foot by 20 foot by 20 foot tent of stuff in the yard that we had to like, I called it Hurricane CrossFit. I got really tan and really buff from it, but like it was a lot of work. But moving all this stuff, so and just like being responsible for yourself and also like your family, your unit that you're going to ride out the storm with. That was something that I didn't have to experience as a child.
Yeah. In the aftermath, yeah.
Yeah. So that was very interesting and kind of comparing the experiences of like this sort of like, oh, like I don't have school, like whatever, but then also like, okay, I'm living this like economic also, like reality of a storm.
Yeah.
So
well, I'm curious because I feel like multiple just artistic routes. As a high school student, did you consider yourself to be like one with just the band kids, or were you the art kids, or did you go back and forth? And also about your vision. So those three separate things. Like where did you place yourself?
High school, I was one of those that I mingled everywhere.
Same,
so
yeah.
I really didn't have just one group that I existed in. But it definitely was one of those things that I started getting more serious about visual art in high school. And that did affect kind of my relationship with music because it was kind of like, not that I felt like there was a either an or, but it was like, I'm kind of taking this route. So like, I was serious about music until probably like sophomore year, and then it kind of switched over to giving more of my effort and energy into visual arts in that context. So,
what type of classes and stuff did you take to consider like that was your field?
I was in the International Baccalaureates program, so we had IB Art, and that was really wonderful because it wasn't just like, okay, here's how to apply paint, here's how to do this, but it was also the very heavily research-based, intensive learning how to really like inquire into things. And I mean, I still use that today, and I think that's very important. So that was something that I feel like really helped prepare me, and then I feel like my technical skills really got to the next level when I went to Florida State University through their program. So that's where I felt like I've kind of built like my knowledge of materials. And then conceptually, I think I finally have started to like, not that my other stuff wasn't as strong before. I mean, always looking back, you're going to be like, well, that wasn't as like good as the other pieces. But conceptually now, I think working at the Perez Art Museum Miami and working with the children in education, and it's really taught me how to talk about materials, how to use materials to carry history. So the denim, how is that carrying history? The history of the wear, the history of the material, you know, all those sorts of things. So, and then you mentioned visions.
Yes, visions. Please share.
Yeah, I have had like a lot of dreams that like I don't know, it's not necessarily a deja vu, but it's like something that I'll have like a flash or like, and I think that I think the pieces that I produce, those are visions that I've had. And so then it becomes like, okay, as a person, am I going to act on this? Mm-hmm. Am I going to manifest it? Am I going to make it happen? Or not? And I think that for me, when I get a vision, I have to do it, or else it just consumes me.
Yeah, artist.
Yeah. So that, you know, somebody asked me the other day, they're like, well, like, do you have to make these things? Like, do you have to, like, why are you an artist? I'm like, because I was like, there's no other way. I have to be an artist. It's not a choice for me. It's a necessity. It's a necessity, because otherwise I will go crazy. I'll just like lose it.
But it is, I mean, it's eerie is not the right word, but you have this vision a year before the show. then you decide on this show, you decide on the installation, and then the hurricane hits right when you were supposed to install to give you like, you know, the real experience just before your exhibition opens, and you install after the hurricane, right? And you do the opening after the hurricane. How was that? Like, how was that whole process after? Because I mean, from my experience, I mean, after the hurricane, it took me probably a month to get back to a feeling of normality, and I'm not sure if I'm all the way back already. Because I was one of the people who decided very last minute to leave. First experience to leave a house behind and not know if it's going to be there afterwards, you know, and then come back, and then, you know, you don't have food anymore. You cleared everything out. You know, you have like all these things. You don't have. We came back when the electricity was turned on again. We stayed away for that long, but it was like, you know, it takes a lot of time. I'm just imagining what it must be like to install a show in that.
So it was like, well, I will say it was validating, because it was kind of like, I mean, my piece is pretty topical, right? You know, it's like, you know, there's not, like, we've all just gone through this experience about it. And then in terms of kind of the cleanup after the storm, you know, we were talking about these subsects, the pre-storm, during, and post-storm. Like, I finally just like wrapped it up on Thursday when I performed. Like, I mean, it was something that, like, I mean, I was still tackling, and I think the storm really shook people, and it really made you evaluate, like, what do you want in your life?
Reevaluate, yeah, for sure.
And so I think that was really, like, when I was talking about like the general context of Miami, like, I know a lot of people who left because of the storm, or that stuff that you finally were going to get rid of anyways, but you never did. Like, it cleared out a lot of things. So there was it was really hard. It was very emotional. There was a lot of things in my life that I had to clean up after the storm, and kind of like, you know, no apologies, but definitely the like, hey, I'm sorry it was so crazy. I was working on this hurricane, and I know I kind of like left a little bit of like the responsibilities of life aside, because I just could not focus on anything else besides this. So kind of cleaning up and patching back up, and, you know, making sure, kind of like reevaluating who I am. So that's kind of still the process now, but I think I'm on my way to finding that.
Okay, right, great. Well,
it's just also like the process of installing that show. I mean, you build up this grate of wires right on the ceiling, and you had to be on a ladder for hours, and, you know, install all that denim. I mean, it's just like the time that you put into this. It's like, you know, at this particular time when there's so much to do, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, well, this is also like, I kind of feel like it reflects a storm. So it's like all that prep and stuff was kind of like the pre-storm, and then, you know, you have the during the storm, the opening, and like how it's existing, and then the post-storm. And I mean, all of the like the specific dates and kind of like of the show had particular meaning to them. So
because the closing was at the end of the hurricane season,
yeah, so
right?
so November 30th, when the performance was, that's the closing of hurricane season. You know, we can finally, like, you know,
supposedly breathe easy.
Yeah, supposedly, I like that.
Because we've had it go through, longer before. Like, there was that one crazy year, but yeah, please continue.
Yeah, and then, like, I had, the opening of the show was October 26th, and the show's dedicated to Andrew Stewart Parker, whose birthday is that day. That's my cousin. And we're 2 weeks apart, and he passed away when we were freshmen in college.
Sorry.
And but his name is Andrew. He was born right before Hurricane Andrew. His death was kind of like the hurricane to my family. So that also is kind of like, there is aspects of family that are kind of also wrapped up into
another layer,
there. So that was kind of, for me, I wanted to kind of give this as like a dedication to him. you know, like I know you, like I know if you were like in this plane of reality right now with us, that like you would be doing successful and you'd be doing well too. So that was kind of like, dates are important for me. Yeah.
And also maybe he was a part of that dream, because I'm also interested in like dreams and what they symbolize. But more so than that, you did mention, and I think that this is very important being a local South Florida artist, the connection to the PAM. Could you talk to us a little bit about your work there and the importance of what you do and your connection with our youth here in South Florida?
Yeah, so I've been working with PAM now for about like 3.5 years.
Congratulations, that's great.
Thank you. As a teaching artist, what initially actually brought me down to South Florida is in school I was kind of like grappling between, so I was like, am I an artist? Am I an educator? Like what's going on? And I decided I was like, I have to do both. I am both. I mean, I don't think they're necessarily one or the other, but like I'm also really interested in engaging the public. So I applied to a whole bunch of internships like between my junior and senior year of college and was like, okay, what am I gonna do? My mom was like, okay, you need to find some place that has either family or is paid. Didn't get the paid ones, but I did find, I did get the one with the Bass Museum that summer and lived with my grandparents in Kendall. So
Great.
Shout out to Kendall, shout out to grandparents.
Shout out to South Florida Kendall area.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry and Jenny. So I spent the summer there. Then went back to school, and the Bass asked me back, and I was like, yes, I had a great time, and I was there for the summer, and then I was looking for a job and happened to be at a pool party, and someone was there, and they're like, oh, I'm work for Pam, and I'm leaving, and they're looking for someone to replace me, and just like that, and so now I've been working with them. I'm a teaching artist, so I lead the tours and build kind of like through inquiry system, the questions. Oh my gosh, just like what do I not do? The family days. I also work with the PAM Teens Art Council, which is a group of 12 teens from Monroe, Miami-Dade, and Broward.
Excellent.
And so they come to the museum once a week, and I basically am there to help guide them in designing and programming events and things for the public. So we are going to be going to Basel together.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah, we did a Basel raffle. So we're taking some teens from around South Florida to Basel. So kind of giving them the experience and just kind of like, showing them that art is a viable,
lifestyle, yeah.
It is a viable lifestyle. You can make it happen. So I think it's one of those things as artists we have to wear multiple hats. I mean, yes, am I going crazy like while I'm trying to work at my 9 to 5, but at the same time I'm also producing on the side. Yeah, but I mean at the end of the day it's worth it, and I think that that part of my practice is very important to me, that sense of public engagement and trying to, like, my goal is I want to help shift people's perceptions about the world and get them to critically think about the ideas that they already have and like be like, art, is that really what it is? Is that all?
Yeah, I think that word shift is so powerful. I'm curious as to how, from the beginning of the program towards more or less when I'm assuming they graduate eventually, these students, how do you feel them as being young creatives? What shift do you see in them and their artwork and the journey you take them through with your leadership?
Well, what's really amazing is I see that they get like more of the bigger picture, but then also it's like they're sitting there, they're getting to design lectures and programs and art making and all these different things that come together to really activate the community, and they learn how to bring people together and get them to discuss ideas. And I think that's the biggest thing, is so we're providing something that when you're working on these large scale month-long projects that you wouldn't necessarily be doing in a classroom. Mm-hmm. Like you're preparing for a test or something, and we're not testing them. Like it's just like, okay, so how successful do you think this was? Like what do we need to work on? Like thinking about those things. And then more importantly, I think it's also like it's an introduction to different ideas of thinking. So you have 12 kids from 12 young adults from all around South Florida. And they're having to come together to make a goal happen, and they're also learning from each other, and they're sharing ideas, and it's really awesome that I'll get texts from some of them that have already graduated, and it's them hanging out in Boston and them hanging out in New York, and like, so the fact that like also those relationships are being continued outside of the program like is really touching.
Wow. How do they get selected, those kids?
Great question. I had the same one.
So they apply, and usually the application is towards the end of the school year.
Okay.
So keep your eye, if anyone's listening, around April probably or so.
April to all
And
of our
the
South
age
Florida
is?
youth.
High school.
High school.
Yep.
Anywhere in high school.
Yes, and that can also include if you're in virtual school, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you apply, and then you come in for an interview.
April 2018.
And so it is one of those things that with the interview process, it's like we're not necessarily thinking about just the individual, we're also thinking about
The group, right?
The
the
collective,
group,
yeah.
the collective, how, like, what kind of interests do they have together, how do we think the dynamics are going to work, and how, like, so this year we have a lot of the council members are interested in film, interested in social justice, so kind of also trying to make future connections of, you know, these leaders.
And also with the shows, I think it's awesome with the film show that is up right now
Yeah.
with Dara Friedman,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Those kids to get to experience like 60mm film projectors and all those, you know, all the videos that are there. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and I'm curious, since like you mentioned high school was like your turning point as well, it's their turning point as well. Like maybe they start off as visual artists, maybe the opportunities you're teaching them, like what will they gravitate towards? Management, maybe scheduling, maybe artist talks, maybe even more the visual arts, maybe.
And the best part
social
about
media.
it is like we really don't say that you have to be an artist to apply. We're just looking for if you want to be in the museum and you want to learn from it. And so what does that look like? You know, it's so we have different bodies of interest from everywhere, and I think that that's really important, that it's not just
the same.
It's not just the makers, and it's not just the visual artists, but
A
there's
little bit of
also
everything.
yeah.
What it's like in the real world.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, so many people who work in the museum don't make art, you know, that like what it takes to keep this art place like you know, afloat and like functioning is like so many people who care about the work, but who do management, who do fundraising, who do like you know,
yeah, and that, I mean that's what I'm finding, like just in general, like arts practice, like not being afraid to ask out to people for help for something that you don't know how to do.
Exactly.
And like in order for you to really like, if you want a vision to manifest itself, like depending on the size, like, you know, you're going to need help, and you're going to need to understand that it's okay to lean, not even lean, but just like build something that would never have existed before if it weren't for kind of collaboration. So
Yeah, without your know-how. I feel like sometimes one of the biggest things, like you say, as an artist, is to understand that one, you don't know everything, and two, that if there is a specific need that you have, I mean, it's still your vision, it's still what you came up with yourself in your mind, and you've created, you're still the artist. But yeah, you might need somebody who knows design technology, you might need somebody who knows a little bit more about structure and how much weight can hold up something on a ceiling or on a wall. And so in terms of safety and those type of dynamics, certainly ask help when you need it. I think that's really great advice.
yeah.
So that's very wise of you.
Yeah, that was like I had like my friend Frank, he helped me with all of the setting up the structural logistics for the hurricane and stuff, because I had not seen that piece fulfilled until it was up in the gallery space. Like I like to think of them as like I was like working in my studio, and I had like these giant jean empanadas, because it's made out of 4 different pieces, so they're like these giant pieces that kind of fit together structurally. But yeah, I hadn't seen it fulfilled until that moment. So that was I'm very grateful for his help and like being able to get that up. And it was just funny because I also had I hadn't planned on, well, I knew I was going to need help to hang it, but I literally hadn't like really made the effort to do so. And then my friends happened to be stopping by the gallery, and they both got roped into a whole night of hanging these pieces. And they were like, "What are you gonna do? Like if we didn't come?" I was like, "I don't know. It just it happens. So, we don't have to really think about it, right?"
Yeah. Installations, kind of the behind the scenes situation for most artists. Sometimes people hang your work for you, sometimes you hang up your own work, but I always say it takes a village. It definitely does. So I'm happy that you have your village people that will assist you with that.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Certainly. Maria, do you want to, or do I talk so much.
I would definitely like to go a little forward. So you had this experience now as a solo show. Was it your first solo project?
Yeah, it was my first solo project.
Congratulations.
Thank
Great.
you.
It's a big thing, you know, for an artist. Elisa just had her solo show too. It was your first big solo show too.
It
right?
was my second one, but it was my first like big one.
Yeah. So it changes you, right? As an artist, it changes the way you look at yourself, at your work, and so you know what would you say? What was the experience for you like, and where do you go from here? You know where.
I think as an artist, you need to be a project manager. And so that was something learned. But the biggest change that has been is how Miami's treating me now, like differently. I've had a lot of people in the community coming up to me who like I've kind of seen in periphery, but have never like really kind of like shook hands, met sort of stuff, and coming up to me and being like saying like, hey, good job, good work, like thank you, like this is really nice. And I'm like, that's been really cool. Is just like I don't want to say like the recognition, but just you know
visibility, definitely, right? It's like you're occupying space, you know. It's and you're showing yourself, you know, in a way that
getting recognized
you haven't done before, because it's different to hang a piece in a group show or to really, you know. Take your space.
Yeah, and because it is one of those things that I feel like being able to show a body of work as opposed to one or two pieces, like you really get more of the vision through it. And it was just one of those things that, you know, I've also haven't had, well, I mean, I've done projects that have been like months long projects, but this is the first one that was like a solid chunk of time of my life that it occupied and dedicated and, you know, really put forth into making it happen. So it was really, I think it was really interesting to learn about persistence and just, and not getting sucked into the hole of, well, this is too big. Being like, okay.
It's never too big.
It's never too big. You just gotta like, okay, I gotta come home. I gotta sit down, I gotta, you know, play some music, and I just have to sit there and I have to sew, 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 and I have to sew.
You sew, who taught you? Let's go into that.
Well, I don't have like any formal sewing training.
That's fine.
But
you have a machine, right?
I do have a machine.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I have a machine, and also like there was a wonderful moment of revelation with this project of when I switched from a straight needle to a curved needle. Oh my God, life changing. Like it actually made it happen. I was able to like, I'm like, okay, like I can go in and out of this chicken wire now. Like, I come from a lineage of sewing. So
that's great.
Zastera actually means like tailor in Czech.
Oh, that's exciting.
And
in what language?
Czech.
In Czech.
In Czech.
Yeah.
Do you speak? Do you understand?
No, not at all.
Have you been?
No.
Oh.
I know Prague's on my
to-do list,
yeah. But yeah. And then also like so on that's on my father's side, and then on my my grandmother, she was like always quilting, always like making stuff, and so
you do have a creative in the family. It's just a quilter. It's okay.
Yeah. So
please continue.
She was the one like not necessarily that I learned from, but like that. So there's always been sewing stuff around the house. So there's always been, you know, something that, you know, I feel like it kind of has rubbed off on me, because I something that I've noticed in like all of my work going back even to like the three biggest bodies of work that I've done have included sewing. So even those painting nightscapes that are stretched with the pleather, it's there's sewn elements that are in like fishing wire to make a fence or black string. Like, so there's always kind of been this idea of I don't know, like
the fiber woven through,
the fiber woven through this aspect of like building the narrative through the line, and also like that repetitive gesture. And I just also really like the tactile nature of the piece. But it was definitely rough on the hands. Like my hands for that project were just like
Symbols.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was just it was funny. It was very like blood, sweat, and tears.
Literally.
Like literally like blood, sweat, and tears. going
And
into this.
those needles that are
Curved.
not straight, they're curved needles. They're like the worst because you always hurt yourself with them because you're
Because you
always
don't know where they are,
expecting to be. You kind of trained yourself to know where a straight needle is going to be, but the curved needle, it's like
Yeah, surprise.
they work well, but they
work
hurt
really well,
like,
yeah.
hell too. Yeah.
But I think it also kind of like it inspired maybe I'm thinking my next body of work.
Great.
I want to continue to explore denim
And incorporate it. Go.
because denim so it's this material invented by an immigrant, now so innately a part of the American identity. So kind of what I was just trying to discuss with the storm is kind of like what is happening right now and like what does it mean to be an American, and like having this swirling mass of denim that's then sucking up all these objects that are relating to environment, foreign affairs, LGBTQ rights, and immigration, like all those things coming together and talking about this within this piece. But with kind of like the blood, sweat, and tears, kind of thinking about the aspects of labor and kind of like what built this country and what also like continues to drive it, but then also where do we have issues? We have a lot of labor issues, and I think those come from industries that are dying or are not sustainable. And so how do you focus this aspect of labor somewhere else?
Certainly, they get outsourced. I think it's, at least it has a history in art history, the importance and the connection between fiber and the workforce and the labor that goes into sewing and how it eventually becomes, it goes abroad and we can't afford it to hire Americans because we want to, everything has to be cheaper and the materials, and there's a degradation that occurs, or like even in the fiber district and fabric district in New York City, fashion district, people throw materials out in the garbage cans, and I had classmates that would go collect stuff and just create pieces from it and discuss that important subject. So I think we're excited to hear about what it eventually will look like. It's really cool.
So I mean, it's interesting thinking about. I mean, one of the things I've been trying to move more into, and why. Well, I moved from the dark nightscapes because I didn't feel like I was addressing enough of what was going on.
Okay.
So I felt as my duty as an artist, I had to move on.
Okay. Well, you finished it, so.
Yeah, it wrapped up and
Done.
And I don't know, it was just kind of this also reevaluating like my practices as a human being and kind of living and thinking more sustainably in my own practice.
Yes.
So that's kind of also what came from like this donation of denim and secondhand clothing, because clothing is a huge stress on the environment and also on economics too. Like,
Totally. Do you thrift shop?
oh, all of my stuff is pretty much
Same, I
thrift.
thrift shop as well. Because that's something else I feel like in connection to your work, you mentioned the use of fiber and then mentioned the use of like the fabrics, but I feel like your style is so unique in that you wear whatever you want and it always looks good on you regardless what people label it as. It just, it just works. You have that visual instinct to just select and just coordinate. I don't know, I just want to put that
Thank
out there.
you.
People will see in the snapshot.
I mean, I like to also tell a story through existence. So, like for example, for this whole hurricane thing, like from the beginning of hurricane season till I was wearing denim like every day, and it would be like different kinds of denim, and as it started getting closer and closer to the storm, like the denim started becoming more and more ripped, more and tattered, more bleached, like so like, and even towards like the performance that I had, like I wore this like one dress that I had in the beginning, this denim dress that then I bleached for the opening, and then for the closing I had like shredded it, and then it was shredding through the night, and I was like ripping it throughout the night, so then it kind of just like was just like tattered and falling off, like kind of going through the storm. So I think it's important as artists that, and I mean, I think something that makes somebody an artist is like when you're authentically living that whole self. And so I've never felt like, I feel uncomfortable if I'm wearing just like, I guess like, something that I know isn't me.
Yeah. You have to be comfortable in what you wear, whatever that is. Done. Yeah.
And so, and I think also it's like, I mean, I know like, wherever I go, like I know I'm getting looks for the style, and I know like, you know, and some of that's positive, some of that's negative, whatever, but it is kind of like just showing that there's other possibilities to life.
Totally.
And I think that's very important for some people that need to see, like, sometimes it's just like you need to like be shaken a little bit, like what's happening over there, because it's like that person's still existing, they're in the same space as you are, but you have completely separate, like...
Yeah, you're outside of the box, you're being original, you're being you.
So I think, and
That's
I think
okay.
that's okay, and that's important to tell people, like, it's okay to be you and not
Totally.
be afraid of that. And I think that that's where some of the most amazing people come from, is like knowing when you have a vision and sticking with it.
That's exciting. Well, I think Maria has a question for you.
And you know what's coming. It's a magical chair that you've been sitting on, and it grants you 3 wishes.
Okay. 3 wishes.
You can wish for anything, but you have to say it out loud. So it only comes true when you say it out loud.
Totally.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you my next goal. Like, so I kind of have these. I'm very ritualistic and the way I practice life, and so kind of again talking about like these manifesting or making things come to fruition. One of them this last year was I have a passion planner. It makes you write out all your goals for the year and stuff. And one of them was solo show. So
exciting.
Check that off.
Nice.
So I did Year of the Artist. I'm coming to the close on the Year of Self, and this next year coming up is going to be the Year of Settling Debts. And so I don't just mean that monetarily, though I need to do that too. I also mean that in just kind of like wrapping it up, and also just knowing, like, as I kind of move through space, like, how can I rearrange things but not like trample?
That sounds great.
So that's, I guess, I don't know how to necessarily word that as a wish, but that's where kind of the next one for to
that
kind of
goal
like
to come
settle
true.
the debts, to make that happen.
Wish number 1. That's a good
Wish
one.
number 1. Wish number 2 is I wish for more activation. And I mean that of like, I want people, I want the public to catalyze, to come together to solve problems. And I think that is something that I would like to see more of.
Yeah.
Instead of kind of this, I mean, I know we all want to kind of bury our heads in the sand sometime right now, but, in any aspect, but I would like to see I would like to have like a little bit more coming together in order to tackle issues. And then...
Number 3.
I wish for more awareness.
Good.
So I mean that in all aspects, where I think sometimes it can seem a little daunting to learn something new, or to try to understand a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I would really like just kind of like there to be a little bit more openness and receiving, understanding and
different viewpoint, acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Those are good wishes.
yeah, those are.
And go to Prague.
And go to Prague.
Yeah.
Well, I think. Well, I have kind of some.
Connections?
Well, not connections, but I have some ideas of where the next travel is going. Well, I'm actually going to be in LA for New Year's,
That's
which
great.
is kind of another future goal. So that's another thing, like, again, kind of this aspect of ritual and kind of holding true to the vision and making sure things
Check
manifest.
out what's out there, definitely. Nice. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Alexandra.
Session
Zastera.
33.
Your show at Ant Gallery is going to be up for a little while longer.
Yeah, it's going to be up for a little while longer. You can
So-
check it out before the end of the year. So.
Listeners who
Gallery.
have not seen it, check it out. It's a really fascinating experience, and
Force
also listen to
majeure.
the sound, which is awesome.
At Ann's Gallery.
and
If you're in the area, stop by.
Elisa has a show up in
You don't
Coconut
have, we're
Grove.
doing Alexander. I'm so embarrassed.
I have to tell the listeners that too. Elisa is incredibly embarrassed right now.
Gothic
It's
ciphers.
at where the Frameworks is. It's called
Second floor, Williams McCall Gallery.
Call Gallery.
So
Call
embarrassed
Gallery. Elisa's work
I
is
love
up
you,
there, and
Chica.
it's awesome too.
Okay,
So,
but go to Ann Gallery. Check out Alexander's stuff. And thank you for coming on.
thank you, Alexander.
you.
Bye, guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.